My nephew wanted to turn my lakefront cottage into an Airbnb. I said no. Then I found the listing. Before I continue, please subscribe to my channel and let me know in the comments which country you're from. The real estate agent's pen made a soft tick as she pushed the final paper across the desk. I sat in her office in Nanaimo, watching rain blur the windows into smudges of silver, and I held the keys to something I had long imagined in the quiet hours of my life. The cottage cost me $452,000. 38 years of work behind the pharmacy counter, every evening shift, every holiday, every overtime doubled over prescription bottles and ledgers each one had added up into this purchase. The drive home took nearly an hour, winding through fir and arbutus until the road finally gave way to the inlet. I left the engine off and sat for a long minute. The cottage stood a little over 60 feet from the water, tucked among trees with pale, peeling bark. A great blue heron stood in the shallows, perfectly motionless, as if the world had agreed to pause while it hunted. No city sirens, no traffic drones, no neighbors' late-night television. The silence was thick enough to hold a thought. Inside, the place was small and honest. One main room with a hearth, a compact kitchen with appliances that looked built to last, a bedroom that fit a queen with little spare room, and a modest bathroom with a shower that required you to step carefully. The windows took in the inlet like a living painting. For the first week, I moved in slowly, like someone unpacking memories rather than dishes. My leather chair sat where the morning light would find it. Books lined the shelf, medical journals, history paperbacks, and a few novels Evelyn had loved. Tools hung neatly in the shed. I put Margaret's photograph on the mantel and felt, for the first time in years, that I had done something for myself. By the first Saturday, I had a rhythm. Wake at dawn, make coffee, carry it to the narrow deck, and watch the sun lift like a slow coin over the inlet. The heron came most mornings. Seals bobbed near the rocks sometimes, and once a pair of orcas moved through like black punctuation marks on the surface, their dorsal fins cutting the water cleanly. I called my sister Diane that night. "I'm here," I said, finally settled. Diane's voice warmed in that familiar way family voices do. "Harold, that's wonderful. You earned this. You need peace." "It's peaceful," I said. "Exactly what I wanted." "Marcus has been looking at properties," she said, and a pause softened the next words. "He's studying real estate. He sees potential." I told her Marcus was welcome to visit if he called first. Later, I sat on the deck and watched the light go soft over the inlet. Marcus's ambition nagged at me like a small, restless fish present, but not yet a threat. He was my nephew, Diane's only boy. Family matters, of course they did, but I had built this cottage for myself and for the quiet Evelyn and I had dreamed about. 2 weeks passed in slow, good weather. I settled deeper into routine coffee, the morning walk along the shoreline, afternoons with a book, evenings by the wood stove. Then the call came while I was splitting wood. "Uncle Harold," the screen read. Marcus's voice was smooth, practiced. "You like my idea? Think about this. We could turn the cottage into a summer rental. I handle everything. You get a share, and when it's not rented, you stay in the back room. Best of both worlds." The audacity of the offer hit me like cold water. My own back room, framed as generosity. "This is my home, Marcus," I said. "Not a business." "But the numbers dash," he began. "With the right marketing, you can see $4,000 to $5,000 a month in peak season. Passive income. I manage bookings, cleaning, all of it. You just collect." "It's not for rent," I said. "I've told you that." "You're being stubborn," he replied, voice tightening. "You're retired. What if something happens? Medical bills? Property taxes? Think long term." He promised he'd stop by to show me his projections. He hung up before I could answer. I set the axe down slowly and watched the inlet, feeling the small, thin thread of anger tighten in my chest. The heron dipped its head and then flew, patient as ever. A week later, a sedan turned into my drive. They hadn't called. Marcus and his partner, Vanessa, walked the rooms as if measuring them in margins and occupancy percentages. Vanessa's shoes were too new for gravel. Marcus pulled out his phone and flicked through a spreadsheet, explaining nightly rates and calendar gaps with a confidence that felt like trespass. I let them speak. I did not want to be the man who shut his family out. But every explanation from them sounded like an invasion of that promise I'd made to myself the day I bought the place. When they left, the sentence Marcus had offered dash backroom would work fine for you looped in my mind like a bruise. 3 weeks later, I woke early to the sound of my phone buzzing on the nightstand. The screen showed an unfamiliar number and the name of a coastal town I'd never visited. Normally, I'd have let it ring out, but something about the hour barely 6 made me answer. "Hi there," a cheerful woman said. "I'm calling about your listing on Shore Stay. Just wanted to confirm the check-in time for next weekend. My husband's allergic to dogs, so I wanted to ask if pets are allowed." It took me a moment to process her words. "Listing," I said. "Yes, sir. The Lakefront Cottage in Maple Inlet. The one with the blue shutters and the cedar deck. Says it's hosted by Marcus H. Lovely photos, by the way." I sat upright. "Could you send me the link?" She hesitated. "Of course, are you not the host?" "I'm the owner," I said quietly. "Please send it." The text came through seconds later. There it was, Harborview Hideaway Rustic Retreat by the water. My home, my chair on the deck, my books lined on the shelf, my wife's photograph blurred in the background of one shot, as if even she had been taken hostage by the lens. The profile photo showed Marcus, smiling broadly in a navy blazer. The description read, "Owned by my uncle, who generously lets guests share this peaceful space. Managed by family, for family." Every word was a theft dressed as affection. By noon, I'd driven into town and parked outside the small cafe with a sign that read Wi-Fi and warmth. The place smelled of cinnamon and espresso. I opened my laptop, went to the listing, and scrolled through the comments. 2 guests had already left glowing reviews. "Perfect getaway, clean, cozy, and beautifully maintained. Would love to stay again." Host was quick to reply. "Everything is described. 10 out of 10. I read the check-in dates. Both had stayed during weekends when I'd been in the city visiting Diane. That explained the subtle rearrangements. I'd noticed the misplaced cushion, the half-burned candle that wasn't mine, the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne. I felt my hands tremble. Not from rage, not yet, but from a realization that boundaries I thought sacred could be crossed so casually. That afternoon, I called Diane. "He wouldn't," she said immediately. "Marcus can be impulsive, but he wouldn't dash." "He would," I interrupted, "and he did. There are photos, reviews. He's made money off my home." Silence filled the line, heavy as stone. "I'll talk to him," she said finally. "Please, Harold, don't do anything rash. He's young. Maybe he didn't understand dash. Didn't understand trespass? Dishonesty? Forgery? He's my son," she whispered. "And he's my nephew," I said. "But that doesn't make theft a misunderstanding." I ended the call before the argument could twist further. That evening, I visited a local law office recommended by a neighbor. The lawyer, a calm woman named Sylvia Chung, listened without interrupting as I laid out the story ownership papers, photos, the listing. When I finished, she folded her hands. "This is clear misrepresentation," she said. "You have full legal ownership. You can't rent or advertise your property without written consent. We'll send a cease and desist notice immediately." "But Dash," she paused. "Are you prepared for the family fallout?" I looked at the floorboards. "I've spent my life avoiding conflict, but some lessons need to be taught." She nodded, drafted the notice, and by the next morning, it was sent to Marcus's email and Shore Stay's legal department. The call came that night. "Uncle Harold," Marcus said, voice sharp with disbelief. "Did you really get a lawyer involved? You could have just talked to me." "I did," I said evenly. "You didn't listen." "I was helping you," he shot back. "You have no idea how much this place could earn. You're sitting on a gold mine and wasting it." "It's not a mine," I said. "It's a memory, and you're digging where you shouldn't." "You're being ridiculous," he said. "Everyone rents property now. You're just stuck in the past." "Maybe," I said, "but I still recognize betrayal when I see it." He hung up, muttering something about ungrateful old men. I sat for a long time afterward, the cottage quiet around me. Outside, the rain had returned steady, patient, cleansing. I thought of Evelyn and how she'd always said money reveals people more honestly than confession ever could. 2 days later, Shore Stay removed the listing. The profile vanished as though it had never existed. But the damage lingered, like the faint watermark left by an old photograph. I told myself it was over, but the quiet felt different now. The inlet looked the same. The heron returned to its post, yet I couldn't shake the sense that someone might still be walking through my rooms while I slept. That's when the next call came, not from Marcus, but from an unknown voice. "Mr. Fenton," a man said. "You probably don't know me. My wife and I stayed at your cottage last month. We wanted to thank you again. But I thought you should know your nephew was here yesterday. He said the listing would be back soon under a new name." I didn't wait for another confirmation. The moment the man's voice faded, I grabbed my coat, slid into the truck, and drove toward the city. The rain came harder the closer I got, thin silver rods slicing through my headlights. By the time I pulled up outside Diane's house, my knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Marcus's car was already in the driveway. The living room lights burned warm behind the curtains, a deceitful kind of comfort. I rang the bell once. Diane opened the door, her expression already troubled, as if she'd been expecting me, dreading me. "Harold," she began. "Please, Dash. Where is he?" She stepped aside without answering. Marcus sat on the couch, his phone glowing in his hand. He looked up with a smirk that faltered when he saw my face. "Uncle Dash." "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't start with that tone. I just spoke to someone who said you're still renting my cottage. Under another name this time." He exhaled, setting the phone aside. "You're overreacting. It's just business. People love the place, and I was planning to tell you once it picked up traction again." "You forged ownership information," I said. "You used my property for profit, lied to strangers, and dragged my name into it. That's not business, it's theft." "Uncle Harold, come on." He leaned forward, smiling the way men do when they think charm can fix damage. "You don't need to be angry. You've got, what, $500,000 in savings? You're fine. This could have been our little project. You relax. I handle everything. Everyone wins. I didn't spend 4 decades behind a pharmacy counter so you could sell pieces of my peace," I said. Diane stood near the doorway, hands twisting. "Please, both of you." Marcus, apologize. "Harold, sit down. Let's not dash." "Mom," Marcus cut in, "you don't understand. He's sitting on an asset, doing nothing. You always said I needed to think like an investor. Not like a criminal," she said sharply. It startled both of us. Her voice, usually soft, carried steel. Marcus laughed nervously. "It's not that deep. The listing barely made a few thousand. I even used some of it to fix the gutters." I stared at him. "You walked into my home without permission, rented it to strangers, and now you're justifying it with repairs?" He shrugged. "You weren't there half the time. I figured you wouldn't mind if it was making money." "You figured wrong." I turned to leave, but Diane caught my arm. "Please, Harold, don't press charges. He's foolish, but he's family. Family doesn't break into your home and sell it by the night," I said. Her eyes glistened. "He's all I have. And that's exactly why he thinks he can get away with anything," I said. Marcus stood. "You think you're better than me because you're old and bitter. But you'll die alone in that cabin while I'm building something real." "Maybe," I said, opening the door. "But I'll die honest." I walked out before either of them could answer. That night, back at the cottage, I couldn't sleep. Every sound, the drip from the eaves, the creak of the dock, felt like an intrusion. I lit the fireplace and sat in my chair, staring into the flames. There comes a point in a man's life when anger turns into clarity. I wasn't going to shout or curse or plead anymore. I would teach Marcus something his generation rarely learns: consequence. I opened my laptop and began typing. A post appeared on a local community board the next morning. "Warning to local homeowners. If a man named Marcus Hollis offers to manage or co-host your property for short-term rentals, be advised. He falsifies ownership listings and illegally profits from private residences. Legal action is in process. Protect your home." I signed it anonymously, but the truth travels faster than signatures. 2 days later, my phone buzzed again. "Diane." I hesitated, then answered. "Harold," she said, her voice shaking. "What did you do?" "Marcus just lost his job. His employer saw that post and let him go. He's devastated." "I didn't name him," I said quietly. "I warned others." "You knew it would lead back to him," she said. "He's humiliated. He says people are calling him a scammer." "I didn't make him one," I said. He did that himself. There was silence, then a sob. He's my son, and I'm your brother, I said, but you've been protecting him from lessons he's needed for years. She didn't answer. The line went dead. Days passed. The rain stopped, replaced by cold sunlight that made the water glitter like broken glass. I started mending the deck rail, patching where wood had rotted. Work steadied me. But inside, guilt wrestled with vindication. That evening, as I was stacking tools, I saw a figure walking down the gravel path. Marcus. His hands were empty, his shoulders slumped. Came to apologize? I asked, not looking up. He stopped a few feet away. To talk, he said. I lost my job. My reputation's ruined. Nobody wants to work with me. I warned you, I said simply. He stared at the ground. I was trying to help. I thought you'd be proud if it made money. You thought pride and greed were the same thing, I said. They're not. He looked up then, eyes red but defiant. You destroyed me over Cottage. No, I said. You destroyed yourself over it. I just stopped pretending not to see. He turned away without another word and disappeared into the trees. I stood there for a long while listening to the faint echo of his footsteps fade down the drive. That night, I sat by the fire again. The heron was gone from the shallows, replaced by a low mist curling over the inlet. Evelyn's photo caught the firelight. Would you have done it differently? I asked her quietly. The silence, as always, offered no answer. But for the first time, it didn't ache, it simply existed. Some lessons, I thought, are taught not with anger, but with consequence. Winter came quietly that year. The inlet froze at the edges, thin white veins spreading across the shallows like cracks in old glass. I kept the fireplace burning longer each night, the room alive with the soft sigh of wood giving in to flame. Life fell back into rhythm. Mornings of slow coffee, afternoons repairing small things that didn't need repair, evenings writing notes in a journal Evelyn would have teased me for keeping. Marcus hadn't called since that night. Diane did, occasionally short, careful conversations about weather, groceries, health. She didn't mention him, and I didn't ask. There was a kind of truce in silence. Then, one morning in February, a letter arrived. Handwritten. My name spelled in Marcus's sharp, uneven handwriting. I held it for a long time before opening it. Uncle Harold, I know you have no reason to read this. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I was angry, and I said things I shouldn't have. You were right. I crossed a line I didn't even bother to see. Losing everything made me understand how much you built on your own. I thought I was helping you, but truthfully, I wanted to help myself. I've been doing deliveries, trying to pay off some debts. Mom's been kind, but I know I disappointed her too. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I finally get it. That peace can't be rented and trust can't be bought. Marcus, I read it twice, then set it on the table beside Evelyn's photograph. Her eyes, frozen forever in a half-smile, seemed to look through me. A week later, Diane called. He's been trying, she said softly. He found a small place in town. He's taking night courses in accounting. That's good, I said. He wants to see you, she added. If you're ready. I thought of the boy who'd once followed me down the dock holding a fishing net too big for his hands. How he'd ask questions about everything, fish, stars, the sound the wind made in hollow reeds. Somewhere along the way, ambition had replaced wonder. But perhaps some things could be rediscovered. Tell him to come on Sunday, I said. Sunday arrived cold and windless. I brewed a pot of coffee, set 2 mugs on the counter, and waited. The knock came just past noon. Marcus stood there, thinner than I remembered, the weight of months visible in the slump of his shoulders. Come in, I said. He stepped inside carefully, as if the floor might reject him. His eyes swept the room. The same books, the same chair, the same photograph. Looks just like before, he said quietly. It never stopped being home, I replied. He nodded, staring at his shoes. I didn't come for money or anything. I just wanted to thank you for not destroying me completely. You could have pressed charges. I deserved it. I didn't do it for you, I said, sitting down. I did it for the lesson. He met my gaze then, and for the first time, there was no defiance. Only understanding. I learned it, he said. Good. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, the heron returned, poised like a statue on the rocks. Marcus noticed it and smiled faintly. Still comes here, huh? Every morning, I said. Some things know where they belong. He finished his coffee and stood. I'll head out. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to make things right. Keep trying, I said. That's how you make peace with the world. He hesitated at the door. You ever think you'll forgive me? I thought about it. Forgiveness isn't a door you open once, I said. It's something you build, brick by brick. You've laid the first one. He nodded, eyes glistening, and left without another word. That night, I stepped out onto the deck. The sky was clear, stars sharp as nails hammered into the dark. The water moved gently, carrying reflections that looked almost alive. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a loon's cry, long, lonely, hauntingly beautiful. I thought of Evelyn again, of the years I'd spent giving away time for wages, and how I'd finally bought it back. Of a nephew who had tried to sell it away again, not out of malice, but ignorance. People always say age brings wisdom. I'm not sure that's true. What it brings is perspective, the understanding that most mistakes aren't born from evil, but from blindness. Marcus wasn't evil. He was blind to what mattered. I just had to help him see. Spring came earlier than expected. The ice melted, and the inlet bloomed with movement again, seals, fish, herons, and the occasional canoe gliding through. One afternoon, I saw Marcus down by the dock. He didn't call out. He just waved. I raised a hand back. It was enough. I went inside, brewed a cup of tea, and sat by the window. The sunlight hit Evelyn's picture, making her face glow faintly gold. You'd have liked today, I said to her. Quiet, clean air, a bit of redemption in it. Outside, the water shimmered. I realized something then. Peace isn't a place, or a house, or a perfect morning. It's a choice. One you make, even after betrayal. Especially after betrayal. I leaned back in a chair and smiled faintly. Some stories don't end with punishment or revenge. They end with understanding, slow, hard-earned, but real. And maybe I thought that's enough.